What's up, everybody? Thralls Mellow here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you. So, this is one that I definitely wanted to go over because I've been a fan of this band for a while, and how they connect to other bands I think is really cool too. So we're going to go over the latest offering from October Tide, The Cancer Pledge. This also comes out on the 6th of October on Agonia Records, and actually I even took the time to look through their entire back catalog, and in terms of full lengths, this is the first one that has ever come out on October.
Oh.
Yeah, way to go, guys. This band formed in 1994 in Stockholm, Sweden. They only put out 2 releases and then broke up and then reformed in 2009 and pretty much been putting out steady releases ever since. This is their 7th album overall. I got into them with their album A Thin Shell in 2010. I kind of just picked it up on a whim, checked it out, and I like death doom, and these guys are death doom, albeit like melodic death doom, and maybe a little bit more. And that might have something to do with their pedigree. They feature ex-members of bands like Catatonia, Uncanny, Sentinex, and Demonical.
This is my first full sit down and listen with this band, although I'm very familiar with the bands that it features ex-members of, so I mean, I guess it would only make sense that I would kind of dig this. I've probably heard a song or two in passing. It happens.
So melodic death doom is pretty much, I guess what you would say is their centralized sound. Like, it definitely fits. You have dreary riffs all over the place. It's kind of slow, but not necessarily all the time. There's a bit of a shift on here, and maybe I just didn't notice it from their last album, but I feel like there's just way more dynamic, and for a, death doom album, the pace of it is actually a little bit more up-tempo.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it like aggressive by any means, but when you think about a death doom band, you'd think there would be a lot of like slower, doomy moments. And I think doom, in the case of this band, maybe like the overall vibe, or like, what you're going to get out of like cold, icy riffs and atmosphere, but I wouldn't call it so much doom because it wasn't really that slow.
Yeah, most of the doom elements, I think, carry in the melodies and the overall atmosphere of it. Again, it's very cold, kind of damp. Like, it's a dark, gray autumn day. It's October. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. But within the riff work, you get a lot of cool intricacies along the way that don't necessarily fit under the doom umbrella that is shielding you from all that October likes to dish out. Leaves, rain, maybe snow, who knows? It's kind of a gamble out here in Ohio.
Right.
But as this album went on, there were definitely some notes of bands I really wasn't necessarily expecting, but at the same time, I kind of can hear that in their past work, like namely Opeth. There's a lot of stuff in here that sounds like early Opeth, albeit at a slower pace most of the time.
More akin towards albums like Blackwater Park. That was a huge one. Ghost Reveries, maybe a little bit of My Arms Your Hearse. Not new Opeth by any means, but I mean, there was a lot of that. Maybe a little Mastodon at times with some of the melodies, but I wasn't expecting that.
For example, the opening track, Peace, Quiet, Safe. It's actually none of those. Big dissonant riffs right away, huge vocals. The vocals on here are this massive roar that, again, kind of drew some comparisons to Åkerfeldt, maybe Peter Tägtgren.
Yep.
A lot of vocalists that have good heavy vocals that enunciate as well, like Michael Stan from Dark Tranquillity, Nick Holmes from Paradise Lost and Bloodbath. It has that vibe, and they're projected with such power, not one note. Like, they're kind of all over the place in terms of the range, but it gets this good mid-tempo start. The riffs are heavy and kind of sinister, though I wouldn't call it like oppressive. I would call it more melancholy overall, but it shifts into like kind of a two-step, like not with like grind riffs. Like, it's got a good kind of classic Swedish death metal sort of riff on top of it. You get like D beats, it shifts into blast beats. All these things aren't necessarily characteristic of doom, so there's almost sort of like I would almost say proggy sense to some of this.
Yeah, and it's more from the drum work. Like, the drum work is fantastic. He's very busy, but again, not in the sense of like typical like death metal drumming. There's only really a couple times that there's a straightforward blast in songs like Blued Fatigue and Peaceful Quiet Safe. But most of the time, he's all over the kit, but not in the sense of like a prog drummer would do it. There's not a lot of big, like, lavish fills, but his cymbal work is spectacular, and it's always changing the groove.
And I actually had to look up the drummer on this, and he's been in the band since, I believe, 2019, Jonas Skold. And he actually plays in the band Letters from the Colony, which is more of a gent prog band. And that kind of explains, like, his drum style in terms of all the constant accents. Because there's even some, like, fun off-time stuff. Tapestry of Our End has this really cool off-time rhythm that kicks it off. And it's kind of a unique kind of busy groove. And again, when you think of like doom metal drumming, it's a little bit more minimalistic, you know, not like so flashy in terms of accents or anything like that. But this, he's just, again, all over the kit, but he knows when to settle down and lay on some just solid grooves and add a lot of character to these songs, which already have a lot of character because I think the guitar work in here is absolutely fantastic.
It's phenomenal. There are some chuggy riffs, but most every riff has this really awesome melodic tag to it. Like the interplay between the two guitars, there's always some sort of like harmony going on, or there's a chug riff with this awesome like back melody laid over top of it.
And I think part of that is due to the production and the mix on here. This was actually done by Daniel Lydon, who is the drummer of Greenleaf, which is like totally different than this. That's like more like retro rock, stoner rock. But the mix in here is absolutely fantastic. Everything is separated very clearly, and the layers and all the melodies and everything and how it moves around on the album, especially with lead melodies. Lead melodies are honestly one of my favorite things on this album. They add a lot of that extra somber, sullen, dreary energy to just about every song on here. But it's how they're placed. They kind of come in behind like a main riff, and sometimes they will actually turn from just like an accompanying melody to complement the riff to like a solo. But none of it's like very flashy. In fact, even the lead tone, when it goes into that solo, it kind of sits back in the mix. And you know, like listening to this, you know, a couple of times today, I was like, man, this is kind of like low key showing off. Like, yeah, we're doing some really cool stuff, but it's not like showboaty at all.
Yeah, like there's little pockets of flashiness, like the triplet chug pockets in the last song, Breathe the Water. Like they're just kind of there. Like if you listen for it, you're like, oh, that's really neat. Or the awesome harmonies in I Know I'm Cold, or even in Blood Fatigue, the Faceless style melodic riff that's in the breakdown. That's really sick too.
That is probably one of the darkest, like, kind of weirdest riffs on there. Like, it kind of slithers and crawls and kind of lurches at points. It's a little bit outside of, like, the melodic death doom style. Like, it feels a little bit more akin to, again, like, Mastodon. But how that song shifts around, like, I think that is probably the proggiest song on here. This song kind of goes across the board as far as, like, dynamics on it. Like, you have, again, blast beats with more cold kind of, I don't know, almost blackened riffs, but there's also like a thrashy section that comes in, and generally thrash and doom don't mix up very often, actually almost at all. So yeah, if you're looking for another fusion out there, doom thrash, let's see if it can be done.
Ooh.
Kind of was a little bit here, but everyone kind of just goes ham on here. Like there's some amazing descending melodies on there, like very sinister, and the vocal performance on this song in particular sounds more unhinged. Like you get more of this wailing and kind of like someone screaming at the bottom of a well and no one's helping them out. It's cold out. It's all right. You know, we're not going out there. It's probably rainy and shitty.
Lassie alerted no one that Timmy was stuck in the well.
Sorry, Timmy. But the whole song is very strange and twisted, but it goes together really well, and that is a testament to this band's ability to transition between like these really interesting dynamic shifts. Like the title track, there's an amazing break there with isolated drums that transitions beautifully into the next part, and it's all very fluid. And that kind of represents another side of this band. Their melodic hookiness. Like sometimes when they're not trying to be a little bit more like lavish and proggy and like more intricate with the riffing, they can just lay on some solid hooky melodies that just have that kind of perfect blend of dreary goth rock, but played by a much louder, much more aggressively depressed band.
Yeah, because that transition in the Cancer Pledge, when it goes from that little isolated drum part, transitions into this really beautiful, like, Catatonia-style bridge. It just gets real somber and calm, and it's got a nice kind of swingy drum groove to it. It's great how this band just works together to flow in these songs.
The song Unprecedented Aggression, which honestly isn't that aggressive, but then again, Peaceful, Quiet, and Safe was in all three of those, so
sure,
kind of works. That song is a little bit more melodic, a little bit more straightforward. Like, it definitely has its heavier sections, but it's one of the few where I'd say, like, there's an attempt at, like, cleaner vocals on there. And there's a really good chorus refrain. But I think the big standout for me outside of Blood Fatigue was I Know Why I'm Cold. And it's probably because you're not wearing a sweater. But that song is absolutely amazing. Easily, like, the best collection of riffs on the entire album. The guitar harmonies are absolutely beautiful.
Yep, somber, cold. The atmosphere in here is great. There's even a little bit of synth work that I think really just adds well to the layering of everything. It's got a big, lush type of feeling to it. The harmonies in there are sick, though.
Oh my God.
That's probably my favorite harmony moment on the whole record.
A little bit of that, like, crowbar extra dreariness that kind of pops up in there, but you have these big epic crescendos. So at the same time, like, it's absolutely just depressing and miserable, but somehow it's, I don't know, like, bright and shiny. But, you know, that light is definitely a train at the end of the tunnel and not, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel. And another cool thing about this album is that it's not like that long. Honestly, it feels like just the right length. That's what she said. I know I had to do that. Anyway, the songs themselves are more in the realm of like 5.5 minutes to 6 minutes. The longest track on here is 6 minutes and 45 seconds. And nothing hangs out too long, honestly. For the most part, all this really flows really well. They're condensed, but they still have a ton of dynamics, so there's really no need for like a giant 10-minute song on here.
And while most of the songs are really killer, there was one that I felt to be a little bit off. It's not like it's totally bad, but something I didn't like. The song Season of Arson is really just very straightforward. There's not a lot of flash going on in there. There were some nice bouncy groove moments, but a couple of like tribal transitions. The drum work's very straightforward, and I just felt like maybe it didn't fit necessarily with this lineup of songs, or B, maybe the placement was off.
To me, it felt like a single. Like, this was the one that was, you know, maybe a little bit tamer. Like, granted, the vocals are still growling and, you know, they're still very aggressive and it's still pretty damn heavy. It just feels maybe a little bit more accessible. My issue with it isn't that, because I think it's a really well-written song that has great, like, goth rock style melodies that are in it. Like, you know, just picture a bunch of metalheads wearing Sisters of Mercy shirts. They do that, actually. But the song kind of goes on too long. Like, I think it's a little bit over 5 minutes, and this is one of those songs where it feel maybe a little bit more comfortable at like the 3.5 minute range, maybe 4 minute. You know, it just kind of like drones on certain parts. It's like, okay, yeah, kind of get on with it. But at the same time, I like the melodies. And it kind of has some callbacks to Catatonia, but like early Catatonia, like Brave Murder Day, but kind of mix that with like a band like November's Doom. It's still a little bit heavier and a little bit darker. So that was like legit our only real complaint on here. This whole album was a lot of dreary fun. Like, I mean, don't get it twisted. This is a sad, morose album. It is just gray and bleak and damp and yeah, all that, but it's awesome. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. I really dug this one. I dug the last one too, and honestly, I dug the other 2 albums I had before that. This band is really good at melodic death doom, and emphasis on melody, because the melodies on here are absolutely gorgeous. The guitar interplay, again, is just wonderful. Like, there's layers and layers of just beautiful misery all over this. And the drum performance, I think, is absolutely amazing. Like, every member of this band did their job exceptionally well, and none of it feels like pretentious, none of it feels sappy, none of it feels cheesy at all. This feels earnest and dark, and I dig the hell out of it. And if you are a fan of, well, I mean, Catatonia, Opeth, a little bit of Mastodon, Paradise Lost for damn sure, maybe My Dying Bride at their more upbeat moments, because they're even a little bit sadder than this band. Check this out. This is an awesome album.
I'm with Nick on this one. It's a 4-star album for me as well. I had a great time listening to this. As cold and as damp and as dark as it is, it's still very beautiful. The guitar melodies are amazing. Like you were said, the interplay between the two of them and just throwing in little flourishes or tasty pockets of things. It's not overly flashy, but it's fun to listen to. It keeps the listener engaged. It transitions well. It flows really nicely. The vocals are pretty amazing in the sense that, I mean, you know, everybody can growl, but it's the way that they are kind of shot at you. Like, he's definitely growling at you. They're projected very well. Even the song I thought didn't necessarily fit is still a great song.
Yeah.
There's something fun in every part of every moment of this. The drum work is phenomenal. The accents, the way that he just kind of dances around all these riffs and creates different beats, and the syncopation is great, especially in the last song, Breathe the Water. There's just an awesome moment where the drums link up with everything else, and it has this whole, like, 2 or 3 measure just syncopated jam going on. I would actually call this a little bit more of, like, melodic death metal than I would doom, but it's still really great. Much like Nick said, if you're a fan of Opeth and Paradise Lost and a little bit of Mastodon and like At the Gates even in moments, like, you're really gonna like this. I would definitely recommend checking it out. For a first-time listener, I was definitely more than surprised. I really enjoyed this, so I would definitely recommend giving it a spin.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below, thrallsofmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It's also on our channel somewhere, but thrallsofmetal.com is where you go to find Thralls of Metal gear. We have shirts. We have old shirts that are discounted. We have hats now. If you're looking for some Thrall stuff, that is definitely where to go.
And we're not promoting any shows right now, which is sad, but whatever. This is the time where we thank you. We thank you. I thank you. Nick thanks you. We all thank you. We couldn't do this without you guys. You all have made this such an awesome experience for us. I know we get a ton more coming, but without you guys, we couldn't do this. So just thank you. I'm not going to ramble on, but I am going to say thank you, and thank you, and thank you, and I see you back there. Thank you.
I'll ramble for you a little bit here. One more big thank you from me, because you guys rule, and we will catch you later.